I'm Steve Young, a retired EPA employee and a longtime ESIP member. I want to thank everyone who is here, both in person and virtually. And I want to acknowledge my co-session leader or organizer, Douglas Rao, and our facilitator, Steve Adams. More on them shortly. In our opening plenary, Brianna Pagani mentioned the elephant in the room. We're experiencing unprecedented disruption in earth science, both for the members of the community and to the very science itself. I want to acknowledge that many of our colleagues are experiencing harm. We know how important earth science is and how dedicated community members are. While there is much that can be said about the disruption and its impacts, the purpose of this session is to look forward and discuss the questions, what can we do to support the scientists and the science itself? And strive to identify specific follow-up actions that willing volunteers can implement. Earth science is too important and community members are too valuable for us to allow disruptive forces to halt progress. The ESIP community has unique capabilities to contribute to the greater cause. Our goal here is to brainstorm and identify actions members can take. Now let me introduce my co-organizer, Douglas Rao. Douglas is a research scientist with the North Carolina Institute for Climate Studies, an affiliate of the NOAA National Centers for Environmental Information. Also, he is ESIP's vice president, and rumor has it, incoming president. Douglas, would you like to say anything?
Sure, thanks, Steve. And thank you everyone for joining the session today. Like Steve said, and also I think Tom Paris at the unconference session also said, it's really what comes next and how the community can come together to support each other and also bringing new opportunities and in the next phase that in the face of change. And I think I have talked with some of you during lunch and other things, and some of the ESIP clusters can really provide opportunity for people who want to support, for example, some knowledge transfers, as well as building a knowledge database that can really support things moving forward. And so this session is mostly about what are those opportunities, and I believe our second Steve is going to do a lot of facilitation about different opportunities. And also, if you haven't completed the ESIP community needs assessment that has been sent out in the newsletter or mentioned in the opening plenary, you still have time until tomorrow to finish the needs assessment survey.
Thanks, Douglas. And now let me introduce our facilitator, Steve Adams. Steve will walk us through our agenda and lead from here. Of course, you probably don't know what the agenda is. No, you know what it is, sort of. Steve is the policy director of Lane County, Oregon. He has extensive prior experience with state government and NGOs. And these days when Lane County has a tough issue, they tend to hand it to Steve to fix. You didn't know I was going to say that. So Steve, I'm going to toss to you. We are going to try to go through a set of questions sequentially here, and we're going to encourage everyone to use the notes document. If for some reason that's not working for you, if you want to put something in chat, we'll be able to capture thoughts from chat as well. But Steve,
So
let me.
Would it make sense to add it just right on the conversational point and there?
Yeah, we can do that. Let me thanks to the awesome power of ChatGPT, we did receive some comments earlier from the community survey. And can we hide, Keenan, can we hide the little Zoom control panel thing, which is in my way? Thank you. Just for a moment, we got some comments that were interesting, and the questions, in sequence are, what can we do to help the community, mutual support among members of the community? And at the highest level, we got some thoughts here, and this document is in the session folder for this session. I am not going to read this. We can come back to it if appropriate. The second topic area for discussion is on knowledge collection and preservation. And I feel like this has come up a lot in the meeting, the concerns about loss of institutional knowledge. So, a lot of people have been working hard on data rescue, trying to prevent data from actually disappearing. This could be thought of as knowledge rescue, trying to rescue knowledge from disappearing because people left. And finally, connecting people to engagement opportunities. We're going to have a lot of people who are searching for new opportunities, but they may be in a holding pattern for a while. What can they do in the interim period to remain engaged, to feel like they still have meaningful contribution, that they're still engaged in the earth science endeavor? So that's the third major topic area that we're going to talk about. And we're also going to have a little bit of discussion about who are the allies, both obvious allies, people who should be allies in an effort like this. So, Steve, I'm going to let you run, but cue me if you want me to. And it's up to you whether you want to work that way or at the podium. People on Zoom can see you yeah, your call. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Steve. A pleasure to be with you. So I'm Steve Adams. I am not an earth scientist. I am a policy hack. I have spent more than 30 years of a public policy career working. Okay. Is that good? All right. I've spent 30 years in public policy on the policy side of the equation, largely playing an earth scientist and on TV, as it were, really trying to bring the insights of the science practitioners with whom I've had the pleasure to work into either the state or the local or the federal legislative process. I spent a fair amount of time working in the not-for-profit sector as a capacity builder as well, working largely with local governments around the country. I've had a number of opportunities to work with practitioners from in a lot of different kinds of contexts, try to solve challenging problems. And I will say that, some early thinking around what I'm excited to be here to do today. So first and foremost, I'm Ally One. I'm not of your community, but I'm horrified at what I'm watching unfold on a regular basis. I am a user of your work, the products, the data, the insights, and the knowledge that flow from the work that you do inform the work that I do at the local government level on almost a daily basis, whether that is routine work in trying to understand some of the larger kind of natural resource management challenges within my county of 4,700 square miles, a goodly portion of which is under federal management, or whether it's emergency situations in which we're having wildfires, we're having smoke transport issues, we're having any number of different kinds of issues. So I just offer that up just to kind of maybe establish that we came to this moment honestly. I really am interested in understanding what can be done as we kind of think about this unprecedented moment, perhaps, for the community. And maybe it's unprecedented comes too cheaply. Maybe it's too easy to just throw that out. And maybe, in fact, there are some parallels within the recent past or deeper past that can help to inform some of the conversation, and then get us to hopefully kind of a generative conversation around what can happen. I think I had the opportunity to hear the conversation that was happening in this room in the session immediately before this, in which folk were talking about funding. And largely the conversation was, if your funding has ceased or is at risk of ending in the near future, how do you rapidly diversify, right? So it was along those kinds of conversations, and people were the thread of the conversation was, well, we need to diversify our funding. We need to think about how we can enter into partnerships with others. We can, in short, learn how to become salespeople rather than maybe science or information or knowledge producers. And that's remarkable. The parallels here that might be on offer, or at least the case studies, there has to be across the whole of the room here instances in which folk were working at some point in their career, and a large project on which they were working ended. So that's not a new thing. We've had one-off kinds of things happen over the years. Those who have had funding from the philanthropic sector, if you had foundation funding, you would know that foundations are fickle funders, and they really like to fund the new thing. And your thing may have been new and shiny at one moment, but just a few years later, it's not, and they've moved on to something else. We've had, I think, all of us in our most recent memory, certainly the impact of COVID in 5 years ago, and what that did to the whole of society, what that did for at least for a few moments, that shut down a lot of institutions, a lot of local governments, a lot of other kinds of not-for-profit organizations. And, but for a heroic effort on the federal government's part, on the part of Congress, to inject a lot of money into the system, a lot would have been lost during that period of time, just because of the incredible economic harm that could have happened. And we've seen other examples, a couple that maybe come to mind to illustrate the point. Certainly, we're in Seattle, and here at the University of Washington, I had the opportunity to work with the Climate Impacts Group that is at the University of Washington, SIG. It's a storied regional science center, and certainly one of NOAA's earliest RISAs, going way back into the 90s. They had developed, as a regional climate science center, really kind of this idea of being able to provide science products to practitioners from a lot of different walks of life. They had a moment in which they lost their funding, and it was an existential challenge for them, because it was a single pot of funding that all of a sudden went away. And it was a story of Amy Snover, at the time was running SIG, became very entrepreneurial in thinking about how to diversify what they were doing. And over the course of a number of years, they made themselves stronger. RISA's got, I think, NOAA's cycle is once every 5 years to get a science center, and they stole it back away from Oregon State University at the next iteration. But they did so in a way that was really quite remarkable, and it really was kind of emblematic of the kinds of challenges that we, I think, are seeing happen, and certainly were discussed in the last session. So, I think the question here for the earth science community, or at least the practitioners that are gathered here, are what are some of the key pieces of work that we can be doing? Folk are now working, it sounds like, at the largely individual project level. It's kind of a fend for yourself kind of moment. And it sounds like ESIP is working to try to step forward and provide some connective tissue and some kind of supports. And I think that's largely happening. Within my local government, we have a public health facility, and I can tell you the public health practitioners, they're pretty well organized around the country. We have a logical system from the CDC to the states to county public health administrators and public health officers. They're trying to figure out what to do with CDC resources coming offline. And it is almost like a word of mouth thing that's happening. It's really recognizing which labs and which states can take on specific kinds of analysis for particular kinds of pathogens. And if federal resources are no longer going to be available for these sorts of things, they're at least trying to figure out how to reorganize their broader network and their broader system so that they can continue to try to provide the kind of services that they're required to provide, and to do so in a way that continues to kind of represent the best of evidence-based practice, and trying to kind of protect that information. That is a challenged model, because they too are heavily reliant on federal resources. And there was, within the public health establishment across the country, there was a rather large surplus of COVID dollars that the Biden administration had essentially just reprogrammed for broader public health purposes, that was sitting within state and local public health authorities, that I don't think many of us really fully appreciated just how much money was out there. It disappeared, and it disappeared in a hurry. And state legislatures have had a hard time making up for the loss of those dollars. So my public health authority is in the midst of cutting FTE because of that rapid loss. And I don't think we're alone, not by far. And certainly my state agency is looking at doing similar kinds of economies. So we're seeing within that community a use of its existing structure to try to figure out how to manage through a challenge. And so the question then becomes, what does that look like for other kinds of communities of practice? And for the question here today, what does that look like for you and for the work that you do? I won't pretend to have any of the answers. I have none of them. I am here merely to help try to kind of, play Phil Donahue and hear the wisdom from this group in terms of what's happening. I think that one of the things that I just want to say, and then I'll shut up, is I really want to help. I want to volunteer my time to help try to figure out how to fund some of the stuff that is clearly necessary here. I think foundations are interested in trying to help, but they don't know how to help. I can tell you that in my state, our legislative session just concluded, and the watchword of our chief budget writer on almost everything was, we don't have enough money to fill the federal gap. All the money that was coming into our state that has disappeared, we cannot fill it all. And so don't come to me with a story about, I'm losing federal money, now I need state money. That is not tenable. We have to be strategic. We have to see what we can do together. And what I think the foundations are in a very similar thing. I don't think that anyone running to a foundation with a particular project is going to have as much success as if groups of practitioners were to come together to a foundation saying, we represent this space. We have worked together to identify a strategic asset that will help all of us, and we need you to help us invest in that. So what are those strategic assets? And I hope potentially that we can get to that point. And before we open it up, Steve, did you want to jump in?
Well, so yes, I'd like to pivot to beginning with topic one, which we have up in our notes document. And I think what we're going to try to do is to have some quick group brainstorming, but in particular, I want to encourage people to actually capture your thoughts in the notes document, or if for some reason the notes document isn't working for you, use chat. And we'll be able to grab the chat later. But we're really, at this point, primarily looking for people's ideas. So Steve, hopefully you could kind of facilitate.
I
And
can.
I'm going to put a 15-minute clock on this time. Oh, thanks, Douglas. I'm going to put a 15-minute clock on this topic, and then we'll move on to the next topic and
Okay,
similar.
That's
thing.
perfect. All right, so we're gonna go to live to the audience here. So how can the community, the earth sciences community, provide and enable? How can the earth science community provide and enable mutual support for practitioners within the community who are being impacted? Who's got a thought?
Come on. This group is a lively group. Steve.
Yep. All right.
People online. Okay, people online, Steve Diggs, you can turn off your audio now. So my co-chair, Chandra Earl, and I run the cluster for a data help desk. And that is something that people have found to be a mainstay of ESIP. It was federal funded at one time, and we lost that federal funding quite a while ago. Show up at meetings and basically help people with data. All kinds of questions come in, and this is something that if supported and executed properly, is a really good way to push back in this moment to actually help our own community. So we hope that we'll be restructuring the way that the cluster works, but we do have some upcoming meetings, GSA and AGU, that we want to show up. If we show up full force and you all participate, so much the better.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Katie Hoberling. I'm a director of policy at an open environmental data project. And I would say a lot of what we can do is advocating for each other in different spaces. AGU has had these days of action where you can go to DC and lobby with your representatives. They're now doing it in people's actual districts. So elevating stories of how you've been impacted or how people have been impacted with your elected representatives, I think is a really good way. And if you can't do that, then talking with nonprofits like mine who are trying to do this as well. So yeah, elevating stories of impact, getting those in front of people who have power, especially at the federal level, since you're right that states don't have a ton of resources that they can share either.
Maybe this isn't naive, but some sort of coordinated social media strategy where there could be some coordinated work to create content that could then be shared by the community.
Well, I like that. I mean, I certainly watching from afar, watching stories in the Washington Post of local photographers doing free headshots and stuff like that to help people with resumes. That seemed to be the first response. And then, to your point, I'm seeing now WAPO was reporting on folk bringing their kids with them to Congress right before they went on recess. So they're walking around with their kids at this point. But even more, I mean, you've probably heard StoryCorps on NPR, right? Where you're talking to grandpa about the war or something like that. Why aren't we talking to scientists who just lost their job? What did they do? Oh, okay. Oh, yes.
Hi, I'm Eli Holmes. I'm with NOAA Fisheries, and I lead our data science workforce development program. And I have kind of two ways that I'm thinking about right now. One is I've been really attuned to the, job announcements coming out, part of it, certainly have a lot of colleagues who are looking for jobs. And so I'm sharing that. But I work a lot with early career scientists. And I'm struck by how many of these announcements say, a certain education and then 3 years of experience with these explicit tools. And so what we've been doing is thinking about like how can we provide young scientists the opportunity to get the experience and then importantly be able to like put on their CV that they so they can count that as something. So for example, I'm running a hack week. It's called Ocean Hack Week coming up in a month. And our steering committee got money for fellows this year to join our organizer team. I mean, honestly, it was not very much money. They get their travel, which we pay for all our participants, and they get like $1,200 stipend. It's really not that much. But, for them means a ton to have that on their CV. It's like an official thing. We're an official thing. So just giving people that opportunity so they can like get that experience and put that in their on their resumes, I think is going to help these young scientists or anyone else who's moving to a new direction. And then the second one is one thing we have been really encouraging folks in our community, our open science community, is when they're creating things, to create things with the idea of reuse. So, and being very intentional about that. So, hey, you're creating a GitHub page or a website, make it as a template and then make your version using that template. And you got to do it anyhow. How about make it a template? And we've been really successful in that, like creating things as templates or research how to analyze this data. You're going to do it anyhow. Make a Jupyter notebook, show other people how to do what you just did. So just trying to encourage people to be more intentional about sharing and about reuse.
Tom Paris, sorry to double dip, and this might be off topic, but so I run a private for-profit consulting company, and I see this amazing talent pool, but I have the same issue with funding. But I'm wondering, I'd be willing to bring people on sort of a no overhead basis, but I still need to pay their salaries. And I'm wondering, I bet that's common across the sorts of consulting companies that my peers. And I'm wondering if there'd be a foundation willing to fund some number of these for a fixed amount of time, provide some runway while still providing the ability to do professional development.
Well, and potentially keeping people employed for a minute. Yeah. Other thoughts?
I actually wanted to add on to that last suggestion with an anecdote where I actually had an opportunity to do exactly that with a consulting firm. And then it turned out that NSF has a program that lets students like work for private companies while still enrolled at a university. And my university's grants department just like refused to even entertain the notion. So if there was some way to do that kind of outside bureaucracy, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so we'll come. Training data advocates. Are we capturing these in real time as well? Celebrating retiring professionals, consolidating resources. And so we've had like retirement has been over the last 6 months has been traditional retirement. I'm at the end of my career and I'm leaving. But it's also been folk who were retiring maybe a little earlier than they had imagined, right? Because there was that opportunity. And so is that something to drill into? Is there a bit of an encore there, maybe, or a, I don't know, 2-minute drill? The last little bit, for those maybe more senior folk who weren't quite ready to be done. And maybe there's service more broadly to the community that could be done there.
Well, definitely, if there's some way that on retiring, some of that knowledge transfer can happen, like maybe writing, maybe part of the celebration is getting a skeleton of everything we would like to know that we know you know.
Right. The wisdom.
That next top process, I'll be able to expand on that kind of thinking further on this sort of knowledge.
Oh, well, I'd just say, building upon that, in management, a person's salary is calculated by taking their annual income and multiplying by 2.25, which accounts for benefits and everything else. And so when you retire, you shouldn't need those benefits. And so you can be cheaper, to the organization, and maybe they don't need you 40 hours a week either. So this picking of the brain can be happen, but at a much lower cost.
Right. Oh, yeah.
As long as double dipping's a thing. To build on Mike and Ruth's idea even further, I have been to 4 NOAA labs and interviewed people and gotten their reasons that they're eyeing the exits. As you've outlined here, if I had $40 million, I would deputize a whole bunch of people, and all we would do is go and do knowledge transfer and reinvigorate StoryCorps just for that.
I like that. All right.
So one other point that I've heard earlier in the meeting was mentoring, like senior employees potentially recently retired voluntarily or involuntarily, mentoring early career people, and kind of feeling like they're helping someone who's at the beginning and kind of going through. So that's been another topic that I heard earlier in the meeting that I think relates.
And then maybe another strategy here would be just kind of network of networks, right? I mean, ESIP into other organizations and really trying to understand, is AGU doing something similar? What are they doing? Are there opportunities more broadly?
So
Anything more on this topic, or do we want to hop to the
that's
next?
what I'm.
Are we, we're.
Now you could
we're-
always still add in the notes document as we move along, so of course, so. Did
Alright.
did I see one more hand?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to add on to what you're saying and sort of go back to this whole idea of this data help desk, because that's exactly what it is that happens at these help desks at AGU, EGU, AMS, all these different conferences that we go to. It is a way for whoever to come work this desk and really give back to the community and help early career scientists with their questions. So it's both a place for the early career scientists to come and be confident that they're going to get, an answer to whatever question they might have to be able to link into the community better, but also a way for people to give back. And like, it's not just the ESIP community, even though I did put ESIP in there. We are at all of these conferences. And so there is a very wide pool and network of people to talk to. So I'm just reiterating that this is a very, very good way of doing exactly what it is you're trying to do here.
I just want to add, because Steve Dix and Shandra and I and Valid was talking earlier, it's just when all those knowledge base being built through the data help desk, there are a lot of questions being asked and there are a lot of answers that have been provided by the community, but maybe we need more of those, and that can be fed into some of those emerging technologies, which can become some tools to further scale those support to other people for those knowledge. For example, a chatbot based on all those Q&A has happened in the past data help desk, as well as the interviews that Steve is doing with all those colleagues who decided to retire or move to other interests that they have, and those can be fed into those tools and it becomes some other useful information that can support broad community and the users of those Earth data.
All right. Well, let's move on to our second topic, which is really kind of that knowledge rescue topic of what could we do to collect and preserve valuable knowledge that's at risk because of the disruption that's going on. And just one quick thing that I would throw out is ESIP has been doing those video interviews of ESIP members, kind of collecting short stories. So ESIP already has a bit of experience with, in a particular, context, conducting video interviews with people, but it was a different purpose. And but that makes me think, wow, ESIP could potentially help, start at least kind of a structured video interview thing where, willing people who'd like to share could talk about their research, what they were doing when they left, lessons they'd like to share and so forth. So let's kick off another 15-minute roughly segment on.
You got a thought right out of the gate.
I just say I like the mentoring idea because even though there's institutional knowledge, the new person brings on new ideas that could be shaped, and it's a combination of the person with experience saying here's the need, here's what we've tried, and then the new person saying, oh, did you know about this tool? No, I didn't, and that kind of thing. So I think the mentoring part of that is a real key, preparing senior and junior staff together.
But it doesn't have to be in video interview. I accidentally, well, I visited a session today because I realized that it was related to work I had done like 25 years ago or some long period of time ago. And that had just followed on and followed on and followed on and followed on and became things like Czar and stuff like that. And so I noted that during the meeting, and everybody who was there pretty much said, we need to capture those sorts of histories and stories. And they suggested a blog post. And so now I have to write part of a blog post. But, on the other hand, some things are not amenable to video, but might be amenable to other kinds of storytelling.
Other thoughts? Do we have a sense of almost like a map, a knowledge map of the field more broadly? What did it look like? Who was working on what in December of 2024? And who's still active and at the, at the cutting edge, and where are we seeing resources disappear?
And I think related to that, is there some ingenious way that we could be using AI to help with this kind of a process? And my gut instinct is the answer is yes, but I'm not sure exactly, what it would be. But, maybe that's part of it. Did I see a partial now? I expected a lot more lively. I realize it's kind of late in the day, but I thought this would be a very lively topic for us to kick around in terms of ideas. Tom's got.
So I'm struggling with how to do this type of activity at scale, or even if you want to do it at scale. If you want to use AI, you go after all the gray literature in someone's office and digitize it. And create a record and let it be searchable. AI is the way to do it now. But I had an experience when I was a librarian where we were collecting gray literature for a certain subject matter. And one of the people who with more library background said to me is, you're doing the equivalent of saving New York Times clippings. Just so it challenged me to sort of think about, well, what's unique and valuable that we're doing. And so I think it's not that I disagree with the intent. We need to focus it.
And how would you do that?
Right.
How would you focus? That maybe feels evaluative in some way, doesn't it?
So it's looking for the uniqueness, right? What's not available in other venues. So, the file box that contains preprints of or reprints of journal articles that particular person was involved in creating may be less interesting than the things that are somehow unique and irreplaceable. And I don't know how that requires some skill to sort of sift through and tease that out.
Yeah.
One of the things that's come up in recent conversations that I've been having is that, organizations' successes get recorded, but their challenges don't. And specifically, this was in relation to a 65-year experimental watershed project where they had to develop the process of how to monitor this massive experiment. But they had some 900 papers over the course of this that were published, but the publications just leaned extremely heavily towards what worked, where they spent all their time managing to figure out how to solve problems. And so some of the things that are actually missing are from our like historical memory are the actual challenges of doing the science for the first time. And so some of those stories might be some of the most important things that were that are in the cultural memory of an organization, but might not be able to be translated or might not be captured in the great literature and whatnot.
Great. That's a great example. Great example.
I'm wondering if maybe ESIP would just need to do a little bit of demonstration work. Like if we found a few kind of recognized people who had suddenly been severed from their positions who wanted to what would you like to communicate to at least to that ESIP community, and just start with some kind of pilot knowledge capture. And certainly it doesn't have to be videos. It could be in effect a blog post or just a textual document or what the person feels comfortable with, but perhaps start to pilot and see if it scales. Yes, Eli, see.
Yeah. So, we've been focusing on the social side of this. And like the importance of, having enough connection across teams, across groups, so that that knowledge transfer is happening from person to person in this kind of organic way that happens just by people working together. I've been at NOAA long enough now to see this in practice many, many times. Programs that are successful in transferring knowledge are ones where they had a program leader long enough and then somebody junior who's being given more and more responsibility, and then they later become the lead. And so like making sure, kind of looking out across the community, hey, are we seeing that people are having opportunities to interact across the community? And if they're not, try different ways a lot of them fail, you know, that's okay. You try enough of them, you know, some of them are successful in getting people kind of working together. And I think like the ESIP, what are they called? The groups, clusters. That, you know, there are times when that has been very successful at that. You know, I know it kind of ebbs and flows in people's energy for that, but things like that, this thing that is bringing people together, and they work on a problem, or maybe they work on a paper, or they go off and they do a workshop at some other conference to share the knowledge into this other community. So those are kind of, I think, things I think about. How do we get this community and the social people aspect?
Just trying to keep the conversation going. Yeah, okay. I mean, the one thing ESIP did, when was it? Maybe 3 years ago. There was a session on projects that failed, and that was the entire session. And so they had like 3 speakers get up and say, well, we did this, we did that, and the project was bombed completely. And there might be some general application for that, like, you know, like you were saying, just to say, well, and then we did, and then we started over and you know, and did this. But I thought that was a pretty ingenious way to, you know, because people get so, if the whole session is about failure, then, you know, feel so bad sharing it.
There was a shocking amount of energy about that topic of failure. Actually, I remember, and Mark Parsons wanted to do a journal issue focused on failure. I recall that very well, which was an interesting idea. I'm also wondering about, I don't know if Bruce Karen is with us on Zoom or not, but Bruce has his Earth Archive project, and I wonder if it might play some kind of a role in some knowledge capture. So just throwing that out there. I don't know if anyone is familiar with it and, you know, has a point of view on that, but that was something that came to mind. I see that Jessica has raised her hand. Shall we let Jessica, she's Zoom, Steve. Jessica, do you want to, yeah.
Yeah, so hi, Jessica Morgan. I am with NOAA on the East Coast, so it's almost my bedtime. So I have a whole bunch of things to say, and but I've been thinking a lot about, I remember the whole failure thing and how cool that was. So I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm going to try to say this without, like, I'm kind of reading the room in there. It's like, it seems like there's a vibe going on. So there has been a failure of science. And we who are earth science data professionals are a subset of the capital S science to explain who we are, right? And there is a recent executive order that kind of lays out all of these things that apparently we are not doing, because there has to be an executive order to make us do this, be reproducible and transparent and full of integrity and without conflict of interest and all of those things. And so I wonder, why would a pre-professional want to go into science, setting aside all of the funding and you know, institutional situations happening, if, let's say, half of those pre-professionals do not believe that science has integrity, right? And that data is just something that is to be manipulated to get you to buy something or not buy something, right? So that failure, and thinking about the idea of resilience across your work and your life, and how we can talk about the data, right? But maybe we should also talk about who data professionals are. And some of us are PhD professors, and some of us are the opposite of that. And we are a community with like a singular goal to do awesome things, but can we acknowledge that maybe we have failed in explaining what the hell it is that we actually do? So I hope that made sense. And I just want to thank you all for this conversation. And unfortunately, I do need to turn into a pumpkin soon, but I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Jessica. And yeah, thanks for participating. We have about 1 minute left. Any parting thoughts on this topic? Again, you can always come back to the doc and add something later.
I do appreciate the kind of multi-purposing and Jessica, that last point about telling a broader story. I think you know, I'm not a federal employee, so I'm at liberty to say what I think. You know, there is definitely a moment of anti-intellectualism that is being used for political purposes at the moment. Let's just be clear about that. And it's really easy to do the Orwellian doublespeak of I'm going to write the executive order because, you know, the elites can't be trusted. And that's part of the broader kind of thing. So, you know, as we do these things and being mindful about there's an audience within the community of helping to preserve knowledge and to do the laudable things that you want to do, there's still multiple benefits of being able to tell a broader story about, you know, what the community is doing and what are the goals that are in, not a scientist, as I said, but worked with many. And it's just the noble work that happens on the regular and being able to tell that story more broadly. The StoryCorps piece is the most compelling thing that ever came to my mind, you know, throughout this conversation about trying to address that. Yeah, NPR and Ira Glass. Who knows Ira Glass? We need Ira Glass. If you have his cell, let's text him and get him engaged.
All right. Thank you for that, Steve. Moving on to topic 3. So picture someone who has been, it wasn't their plan. They've been placed in a situation where they're sort of in a holding pattern right now, but they want to feel like they're still engaged in earth science. So what can we do to help connect people with meaningful engagement opportunities? They may not pay, but at least it's something that people can be doing in the interim. For example, it might be building up their CV by, you know, learning a new language, a new skill, whatever. One thing that I know, I have a personal bias. Earth science relevant citizen science could be one thing to help people recognize citizen science efforts that might be of interest to them, you know, that they could engage with. And I'll just do a shout out for iNaturalist as one example. And I'm sure everyone was wondering what that moth was that was flying around. In fact, it's perched up here right now. iNaturalist tells me that it's genus Tryphosa, a tissue moth. And now that that's in the database, that might be a useful data point to someone out there, you know, that can't predict the uses of the biodiversity data that are being collected. But with that, we'd like to spend, you know, roughly 15 minutes collecting ideas relating to this topic. So
yeah, is there an opportunity to build like an ESIP community support office where people could write grants and do things for the infrastructure that we're talking about here? Yes, sir.
So this strikes me as a perfect cluster activity where, you know, on a monthly basis, we get together and those, you know, who manage to stay in the field and those who are looking to stay in the field do networking, and a lot of it is, have you considered X, Y, or Z? You know, have you talked to A, B, or C type of, basic career advice, but doing it as a group might be more productive than doing it individually.
So my usual advice for people that are looking for work is get a pull request merged into an open source project. And the third Steve in the room, Steve Diggs, a couple days ago, was mentioning that there are some deficiencies in the open source framework that underlies Zenodo that made it more difficult for him to for people to migrate data into it. And so I suggested, we should be collecting issues that would help us to do these sorts of things and make them available within ESIP. And so maybe thinking about what are open source contributions for projects that it's hard to find funding for, but people could work on and get the pull request merged and use that to enhance their CVs and get some recognition out in the world.
So I'm part of this coalition called Public Environmental Data Partners that's archiving federal data that's at risk. And we don't have a ton of earth science expertise. I know there are people in ESIP, some of them in this room, who are working on this on the earth science side of things. But I will say it's attracting a ton of attention from philanthropy. Like a lot of our donors are changing strategy, and we're getting a lot more attention than we were getting a year or two ago for this kind of activity specifically. We are hoping to be able to offer stipends to people who are volunteering right now, and we might be able to. And I wonder if something similar could be started within ESIP. We even have like a fundraising working group because we've gotten calls from funders who are like, can you just talk to us about what you're doing? So like it kind of kills two birds with one stone. It like helps archive incredibly important information, gives people a sense that they are doing something meaningful and beneficial, and can help build up capacity in the meantime to do things like coding and archiving and data stewardship. So, and also attracts funding. So I will offer that as an idea for ESIP.
Super. And you're connecting people. There's human capital and social capital being built. Cool. Other thoughts?
If you're with us on Zoom, feel free to raise your hand and chime in. And of course, we want to keep encouraging capture in our notes document as well.
Invited talks and guest lectures.
I've been seeing a lot of good input. This is, really helpful.
Local museums.
I was thinking, going back to topic 2, kind of maybe, just stimulating people to think about just tossing webinars or podcasts out there, as another form of knowledge transfer. And if people are doing earth science relevant contributions, ESIP could potentially help to catalog relevant, media of that type of nature. Ruth has got.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so this is totally stating the obvious. But there's a heck of a lot of clusters in ESIP that actually have outputs that are useful and used broadly. And, almost every single one of those clusters could use more help. And that's called helping the people who are helping you. So, I think it should go on the list because it's such an obvious thing.
It does feel like, with this point and to your point about some of these kinds of activities, there may be a way to raise some money for stipends for that sort of thing for folk who are unemployed. But you know, I've certainly been unemployed, and you know, it is better to do something, even if you're not getting paid for it, than nothing. Yes, I mean it's important.
And if the cluster community has decided that this is the next big thing that this community needs to move the whole field forward, why wouldn't you want to help with it?
Oh, and I am so glad that someone mentioned LinkedIn, because that was a thought that had crossed my mind. I do think a lot of our folks are probably on LinkedIn, and could we leverage LinkedIn as another kind of connecting mechanism, like in a thoughtful way? I haven't totally focused on this, but I know they have, you have sites, right? It's both people and organizations. I don't know whether ESIP has a presence on LinkedIn as an we do. So are there ways to leverage what you can do with LinkedIn that kind of pertain to what we've been talking about? I'm kind of stating that as a question. My sense is there have to be. I'd like to make sure, you know, hopefully someone will make sure, if you've heard like the cluster idea that Tom mentioned earlier, that we're capturing, you know, inputs like that. Hang on, Tom.
So I think there's a really easy thing to do on LinkedIn. So, you know, I'm sure we're all sharing, you know, interesting job postings. Just tag ESIP on when you do that.
True.
And that'll get it into everybody's feed who follows ESIP.
Good point.
I'd love to see LinkedIn used. I still don't know how to use it, and I've had a LinkedIn account for a
Steve.
long time.
Steve. Well, I'm kind of reading the room, and I'm thinking let's move on to our next and final actual theoretically structured topic, which is the allies. And there's a bunch of allies that are not yet captured. So by all means, please go ahead and add them to the list, or oh, thank you. Yes, that's better.
There we are. All right.
And certainly, if you want to actually talk about it, raise your hand and we can talk about it.
So I think, you know, just kind of further fleshing out, there's on on university campuses, I work in a local government context. We have a R1 university in our county seat with whom we have a very great partnership. They bring graduate students and faculty in to work on vexing problems for us locally, and we were able to provide internships and other kinds of things. But the diversity of issues that are available, there's a whole not-for-profit management track of folks who are really trying to understand how that works and how fundraising works. And students would love to help write grants, learn how that craft happens. There's students in the business school who are looking for a practicum. So, you know, some of the kind of data, some of the projects that are looking for alternative business models could go in and maybe get some free assistance in those kinds of things. So there's great diversity and benefits on university campuses for sure.
Another resource might be more local organizations that are interested in, like, I'm noticing the list is like, these are generally like national groups. But it's worth considering, like for a project that has like a very like place-based relevance, thinking of, like in Washington, there's like the Evergreen Mountain Bike Trail Alliance or something like that, or like the Washington Trails Association that care very, very much about like land conservation. And so those like organizations might be willing to step in if you have a scientist come along and say, hey, we're developing a product that might be useful for you.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea. And then some marketing to like, how do we get the word out to all of those kinds of folks at the local level?
Okay, so this is going to be more complicated than saying they're allies. But right now, there's also like what I would call an open science land grab by commercial, like by vendors to the federal government that are kind of colonizing spaces that public employees had done previously. And they clearly need experience, domain experience from, a kind of a labor pool, which has been let loose. But the whole business model is trying to eliminate dependency on the labor community and people's participation in some of these vendors, particularly ones that have are aggressively kind of taking possession of what has historically been public IP, is something that we should be kind of very conscious of as a community.
So that's almost a potential adversaries, or at least adverse aspect, which is certainly worth capturing, I think, or watch out for kind of thing. Keep an eye on.
Oh, they what? Okay, never mind. Or they
Oh,
it wasn't hand online.
whoops.
During this meeting, I've seen, they've mentioned that people from Australia have been on it. And so one possibility is to expand ESIP's scope and become more international and
True.
get support through that means.
And I feel like that's been an aspiration of ESIP in recent years. So certainly, especially in this time. Yeah. Thanks.
So foundations, oh, sorry.
Just to build on that comment, I mean, they're interested in mining our talent pool as well. And probably not a bad place to land in a lot of cases. So
do we have any other? Oh, Eli.
Yeah, I think we should be open to the public being our allies. And I say that as like, being from NOAA Fisheries. And then when we go into local fishing communities to meet with them, they are not saying, oh, we don't want NOAA data, get out of here. No, they're saying just the opposite. They're like, yes, we need this data. We want this data. We rely on this data. I know the narrative from the, you read the news, it's all the public's anti-science, and obviously that element is there for sure. But that's not the whole story. There's so many communities that rely on our data, are eager for our data, and are our allies.
That gives me a thought that kind of collecting fishers who are actually positive about and fishing oriented communities that are actually positive about the role farmers come to mind also, that kind of collect input from farmers, where it's just like capturing what are farmers doing with earth science data and making sure that that's highly visible, including to the media. That comes, and there's a lot of other communities as well, but that comes to mind.
Yeah, that reminds me too. So Earth Justice successfully sued the USDA for removing data from public websites on behalf of farmers. And I wonder if they would be interested in supporting something on behalf of fisheries as well. So they might be good people to get in touch with.
Yeah.
And you've got I work for a county government. My association is the National Association of Counties. NACO has a very strong presence, and they're well regarded amongst the 3,000 counties across the country. There's certainly local governments as well, the League of, the mayors and the League of Cities. There's the Governors Association as well. Others who certainly, as you begin to tell the stories, and I think it is that kind of storytelling piece where people can begin to be advocates for you, and whether that's for funding or in the congressional kind of context, right, which will become relevant at some point. Again,
Another community that comes to mind is civil engineers. And like, if you're building things, you're reliant on reliable information about what you should be building for. And if you're not getting good information about current flooding scenarios, for example, you're likelier to not build adequately to be resilient to what we're now experiencing. So that's kind of another community that I think would say, oh yeah, some of these data and some of the model outputs are crucial for us to do vital infrastructure work that we're doing. I know I watched locally, we had a small footbridge wash out at a flash flooding event, and they built a new bridge and they didn't elevate the new bridge at all over the previous bridge. It was built more ruggedly, but they could have easily elevated it at least another couple of feet or even a foot. But instead, they built it on the same, footings basically as the old bridge. And I'm really skeptical about whether it'll survive the next, comparable flash flooding event that is no longer a 1 in 100 years, but more like 1 in a 10-year type of event.
yeah, it's someone's grabbing insurance companies here online as well.
Tom Scott, yeah.
So NOAA has been building out what they call the industrial proving ground, and one of their early targeted constituencies is the Construction Building American Society of Civil Engineers. So this is my naivety, right? So I don't think NOAA can ask them to advocate on their behalf directly.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, how can we take advantage of the fact that that pipeline is actually being built and may and has a constituency, but so is that a role for ESIP? I don't understand what the relevant regulations are and roles and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, third-party activists, advocates are always helpful, right? There you go. But being able to other people telling your story and telling members of Congress or others how great you are is always a good thing, right? Anything else on this one?
This is an echo from our last session, which Tom arranged during the unconference. But we had a lot of discussion about the negative view of the science project as a whole, and from that experience, I felt that there is a lot of that story that has been written about us that was entirely a product of propaganda that was a useful political device for a moment in time. And I don't think that we should be internalizing that as a community, as that's what we're about. And, this is the scientific project as a whole is not a low integrity entity. I think that we are going to get beyond this story faster than we think.
And the more, I mean, stating opinion, the more that we tell our story effectively and also put the human face on it, I think that part of the way that they've demonized scientists is that they've created sort of this straw man image of the scientist as, you know, this nefarious character rather than a likable human being. And so the more that we can put the human face on the members of the community and the work, the harder it's going to be to demonize the scientists. Personal opinion. Well, maybe we should shift gears at
I
this
agree.
point towards wrap up. Let me ask, we've had a lot of great input from a number of people. Some of you have been quiet and maybe you're shy, but is there anyone who hasn't spoken who maybe has been thinking about any of what we've been talking about and would like to make a actual spoken contribution? Again, you could always put it in the document, but anyone who feels like you'd like to say something who hasn't. Alicia. All right.
Yeah,
Maybe you
so
should introduce yourself if that's okay.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'm Alicia Crawl. I'm the new community director for ESIP. And understanding all the changes that are happening, I think we really need to think about as a community if the model we've been using for bringing everyone together, is that going to continue to work really well for us to get us to where we want to go? But again, one of the reasons we put the needs assessment out there, I really want to learn from all of you, like what can we do to help the community, not just through this, but to make sure we're offering things that you actually can participate in and attend. And so I just wanted to encourage everyone to provide input there. Also, feel free to talk to me at any point in time. I've been taking detailed notes too from the conversation. I've come out with a few ideas that I think might work. But just want to I guess, put out there to keep the conversation open. I'm a very data-driven person. I don't like just to do things with just making assumptions and not knowing. That's what actually might produce some outcomes that we're hoping to achieve together. So again, the more I learn from all of you and what you need, the better we can make sure we're offering things that are supporting everyone. So
Thanks, Alicia. Nick.
Hey, Nick Maggio, University of Oregon. So I've just been sitting here kind of thinking about a couple points that were made and maybe trying to connect some of them. One was the excellent point about the retirements and the kind of pipeline that used to exist between leaders and juniors that were coming up and being prepped for leadership positions. And with these retirements, maybe people being thrust into leadership positions before they maybe wanted to be in that position or felt prepared to be in that position. And then this idea of retired people who may be still looking to contribute to the community and to have a role in the fostering of the next generation. And maybe there's an opportunity here for some mentorship. And I think back to a previous organization I was part of, the Campus Champions organization that was dedicated to campus cyber infrastructure professionals. And Henry Neiman in particular talked a lot about the need to help mid-career people make that step into that late career leadership position. And I wonder if this is a time that, while trying, maybe presents an opportunity to help to mentor some people and help them to get from that mid-career point to that leadership point, or to accept those roles that are being thrust upon them.
Super. Thanks. Any other quiet folks who would like to have a quick chance here to say something?
Or loud people that maybe have thoughts about a topic we should have talked about that we didn't ask you about.
True.
A quiet person, so someone else wants to go for a second. I'm really interested in what you just said, and I put Environmental Protection Network up there for a completely different reason, but because they are helping people who are losing their EPA grants figure out how to get them back. But they also have this pretty great model. They're basically a network of retired EPA staff. And they were kind of founded in order to help the public figure out how to work with EPA, but you could take that model and adapt it to create a network of NOAA or NASA alumni who might be willing to volunteer to just share information or give mentorship or anything like that. And I wonder if ESIP could be like a coordinating entity for something like that.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Walid Waret. I'm a PhD student in University of Maryland. So just on building on what you just said, I participated in the AGU 365, and it was amazing actually because I was able to be in contact with people. I mean that they have been in like in academia before, and that was an amazing, I think, a model that we could maybe adapt. Yeah, that was very helpful for someone like me that was totally outsider. Yeah, thank you.
Second, the Environmental Protection Network, we had a $19.5 million EPA grant that we got yanked. And we're part of the class action that's likely to get certified early next month. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Anything else?
Well, I think it is time to wrap up and let people have a couple of minutes before, obviously at 6 in the bar area, as you've already heard, there's going to be the poster session for Funding Friday, always very fun. I plan to go by and hang out. So let me, you can come back to this document at any time. So if you have all of a sudden the light bulb goes off later and, oh, I didn't, say something, you can come in later and add a further contribution or refine something maybe that you already said, or edit in a, collegial manner what someone else said to add on to it, potentially. If you think, wow, that's great, but, let's expand on that a little bit. So Douglas, I should ask, is there anything that you want to, okay. I really want to thank everyone who came and participated. This was kind of a tough thing to tackle. I feel like we got some good input from folks. I think there's much more work to be done, but this gives us a great starting point. So many thanks to all of you who participated. I want to thank my co-organizer, Douglas, and my facilitator, Steve Adams. And yes, and thank you to Alicia and Keenan for their support. And am I leaving anything out? I don't think so. That
needs assessment survey.
yeah, maybe we can put that out in chat or add it to the notes document or something, just the link for it. Yeah. So with that, we are adjourned. Thanks again.
And I'll just say, if I can, I'm a non-scientist, but I want you all to know that I see you and I see the importance of what you do, and I am grateful to you. In a moment when you maybe don't feel appreciated by the broader American public, please know there are many of us who really dearly believe in what you do. Thank you.
Thanks.